Today's mindful moment. Imagine striking it rich, only to find yourself, well, a target for murder. That's exactly what happened to the Osage Nation back in the 1920s. And today, we're diving deep into this dark chapter of American history with Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. And you even included some historical photos and documents, which is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Those really help bring the story to life.
So yeah, get ready to uncover a tale of immense wealth, shocking violence, and a conspiracy that's more intricate than anyone could have imagined.
What makes this story so powerful, I think, is the historical context. The Osage Nation had already been forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and pushed into assimilation, right?
Yeah.
And they ended up on this land in Oklahoma that, well, the U.S. government thought was basically worthless. Nobody wanted it.
Right, yeah.
But little did anyone know it was sitting on a huge reserve of oil.
It's almost unbelievable, right? The land nobody wanted turned out to be like a gold mine. The Osage went from being marginalized to like the wealthiest people per capita in the whole world.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking millions of dollars from oil auctions, a level of affluence that, well, it drew a lot of attention.
It certainly did.
And as we know, not all of that attention was good.
No, not at all. This sudden wealth, especially when you consider like the prevailing prejudice and greed of the time, well, it created a very dangerous mix. And that's when we start to see these suspicious deaths popping up within the Osage community.
Yeah, the case that really seems to have sent shockwaves through the community was the murder of Anna Brown.
Right.
I mean, she was found dead in a ravine, and the initial investigation was, to put it bluntly, a disaster.
It really was. The lack of proper forensic methods, the general incompetence, you could say, of the local law enforcement, it really hindered the investigation. They didn't even take photos of the crime scene.
Wow.
And then another Osage, Charles Whitehorn, he was found murdered around the same time. And they discovered a possible link, a .32 caliber pistol that they thought might have been used in both murders. It just fueled this growing fear, Was this random? Or was there something more sinister going on, like a pattern emerging?
And as if that wasn't unsettling enough, more and more Osage people started dying under these mysterious circumstances. A lot of them, they suspected, were poisonings.
Yeah.
You can imagine the terror, right? Never knowing who might be next.
It's a terrifying thought. They were trapped in a nightmare. Their newfound wealth, instead of bringing prosperity and happiness, it seemed to invite this wave of death. It's a stark reminder of how greed can truly twist human nature.
And then we have this larger-than-life character, William Hale. He called himself the King of the Osage Hills. He had this classic rags-to-riches story, presenting himself as a rancher, someone who really cared for the Osage, a true benefactor.
Right.
But there were these whispers, weren't there, of something else lurking beneath the surface.
Hale is a fascinating character, that's for sure. He was incredibly shrewd, no doubt about it. I mean, he built a cattle empire from practically nothing. He even donated to charities and supported the Osage, even before the oil boom. But there were always these rumors, these whispers about a darker side, A side that could be just as ruthless as he was charming.
And his connection to the Osage ran pretty deep, too.
It did.
His nephew, Ernest Burkhart, was married to Molly, who was Anna Brown's sister.
Right.
So Hale had influence everywhere. And those early investigations, well, they were just riddled with suspicions of corruption. It makes you wonder, was he untouchable?
It's crucial to understand the backdrop of Oklahoma in the early 1920s. Lawlessness and corruption were widespread, especially in the oil-rich Osage territory.
Right.
Hale, with all his wealth and connections, he seemed to operate with impunity.
And the violence just kept escalating. Henry Roan, an Osage man, was found shot dead in his car. Then there was that horrific bombing that killed Bill and Rita Smith and their maid, Nettie Brookshire. Each crime was more brutal than the last. The Osage Nation must have been living in a constant state of fear.
It wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a systematic targeting of the Osage. The methods they used, poison, shootings, bombings, they demonstrate a calculated cruelty, It was meant to terrorize them, to silence them. And all of this while they were grappling with their newfound wealth and all the complexities that came with it.
Yeah, they were facing so much hostility and prejudice from white society. They were resented for their wealth. And now they were being murdered with little hope of justice from these corrupt local authorities. It was a horrific situation.
The fear was pervasive. Imagine living in a community where sudden death could come from anyone, at any time. They were under siege, targeted for their wealth and their heritage. It was a truly dark time.
And the investigations up to this point had completely failed them. They even hired private investigators. But with all the conflating interests and lack of coordination, nothing was really getting solved. The Osage were desperate, weren't they? They needed someone to stop the killings, to find some answers, to do something, anything.
The early investigations really highlight a critical aspect of this tragedy, the absolute failure of the justice system. The lack of proper forensics, the rampant corruption within local law enforcement, it all allowed these crimes to continue unchecked.
It was chaos. But then, a new figure enters the scene. Tom White, a former Texas Ranger, brought in by the FBI to take charge of the investigation.
Yes.
And he brought with him a completely different approach.
Now, this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. White, unlike those who came before him, was methodical. He knew they needed to separate fact from fiction, to build a case based on solid evidence, not just, rumors and speculation.
He seems like a fascinating figure, a man shaped by the frontier, known for his meticulous nature and quiet determination. His approach was so thorough. He started by carefully corroborating alibis, which must have been so time-consuming.
It was.
But it was crucial, wasn't it? To eliminate suspects and pinpoint those who were truly involved.
Absolutely. It was a stark contrast to the haphazard way the previous investigations have been conducted. It shows that White understood he had to cut through all those layers of misinformation and prejudice that had clouded the truth if he was going to get to the bottom of this.
And he faced an uphill battle every step of the way. Leaks within the investigation, corruption even within the FBI itself. Yet he persevered.
He did. It really speaks to just how insidious this conspiracy was, how its reach extended deep into the very institutions that were supposed to be protecting the Osage. It made White's job that much harder.
So we have this incredibly determined investigator facing down corruption and this incredibly complex web of crimes. It's almost hard to imagine. What did he uncover?
What White uncovers is truly shocking, a conspiracy more intricate and horrifying than anyone could have imagined. But we'll have to delve into those discoveries in our next part.
Okay, so we left off with this incredibly complex case, with all the corruption and violence. What was the turning point for Tom White? How did he finally start to, get some real answers?
Well, White's investigation, it was like peeling back the layers of an onion, Each revelation was more startling than the last. And I think a key figure in cracking this case open was Ernest Burkhart.
Right, Hale's nephew, the one married to Molly.
Exactly.
So wait, the nephew of the supposed, benefactor was actually involved. This is where things get really complicated, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Under pressure from White, Ernest, he confessed. And he revealed the extent of his uncle William Hale's involvement in the murders.
Wow, so Hale wasn't just this, powerful figure in the background. He was directly implicated.
That's right. But Ernest's confession, that was just the beginning. White was meticulous. He interrogated suspects. He leveraged this whole network of informants, and he really started to gain some ground. One of the key testimonies came from a man named Bert Lawson.
Okay, what did Lawson reveal? Was he connected to Hale as well?
Lawson's testimony, it was a bombshell. He admitted to planting the bomb that killed the Smiths and their maid, and he claimed that he had been hired by, Ernest Burkhart. And you guessed it, William Hale.
So the facade of the benevolent rancher was starting to crumble.
It certainly was.
This is incredible. So now we have Hale, this powerful, influential figure directly linked to multiple murders. How did White even manage to keep pushing forward? Wasn't Hale, trying to stop him at every turn?
White was relentless. He was absolutely determined to leave no stone unturned, even if it meant, going against his superiors. In fact, he defied direct orders from J. Edgar Hoover himself to bring in a particularly troublesome witness, Blackie Thompson.
Hold on. He went up against J. Edgar Hoover. That's a bold move. Who was this Blackie Thompson that was so important?
Blackie was a known criminal, a former FBI informant. Hoover considered him a liability, a loose cannon. Bringing him in was a huge risk for White.
But a risk that paid off, I guess.
Yes, it did.
So White really took a gamble, and he won. What did Blackie reveal?
Under White's persistent questioning, Blackie, he provided crucial information that connected Hale to the murder of Henry Roan.
This is amazing. White was really willing to do whatever it took to get justice for the Osage. Going up against Hoover like that.
Yeah.
That must have taken some serious guts.
It certainly did. It really speaks to White's character, and his dedication to the case. He understood that every piece of the puzzle mattered, even if it meant defying the most powerful man in the FBI.
And this gamble with Blackie, did it lead to any other, breakthroughs in the investigation?
It did. It led to the arrest of Henry Grammer.
Who was that?
He was a notorious bootlegger connected to a lot of the victims.
A bootlegger. Wow, so the web of conspiracy just keeps getting wider.
It does. Grammer's arrest, it was a big development. He was very well connected and deeply involved in Osage County's criminal underworld. His arrest put immense pressure on everyone involved.
So it sounds like things were finally starting to unravel.
They were, and under that pressure, another accomplice, Brian Burkhart, Ernest's brother, well, he broke down and confessed.
And what did Brian reveal? Was this another piece of the puzzle falling into place?
Brian's confession was chilling. He admitted to helping Hale dispose of Anna Brown's body after she was murdered by Kelsey Morrison.
Wait, who was that?
Who? Morrison. He was, believe it or not, an FBI informant.
This is unbelievable. An FBI informant was involved in the murders. It's mind-boggling how deep this corruption ran. So now White had successfully connected Hale to Anna Brown's murder. What happened next?
Well, with Brian's confession, the net was closing in on William Hale. The so-called king of the Osage Hills was finally going to face justice.
But was it really that straightforward? I mean, Hale was an incredibly powerful man. And this whole case, it just reeked of corruption. Did justice actually prevail?
Well, the path to justice is rarely easy. Hale, despite all the evidence stacked against him, he maintained his innocence, and he prepared for a legal battle that would grip the entire nation.
It's almost unbelievable that he would even try to fight it at that point.
The trials that followed, they were dramatic, full of twists and turns. Hale, he used his wealth and influence. He put together this high-powered legal team.
Oh, wow. Who were these lawyers? Were they, known for taking on these really controversial cases? Did anyone ever, question how Hale could even afford them or their connections to this whole scheme?
Those are excellent questions. And unfortunately, Grann, he doesn't really delve into their backgrounds. But what we do know is that they were very effective because, to the outrage of the Osage, Hale was initially acquitted.
It's shocking that despite all the evidence, he just walked free. It makes you wonder, was it just his money that bought his freedom, or did the jury just, not value Osage lives in the same way?
This initial acquittal, I think, it really exposed the deep-seated biases that permeated the justice system at the time. Hale, a wealthy white man, was able to escape accountability, while the Osage, despite their wealth, they remained vulnerable to prejudice and injustice.
This is infuriating. But White, he wasn't giving up, was he?
Absolutely not. White and the prosecution team, they pushed for retrials for Hale and for his accomplices, this time with increased security and this renewed determination to expose the truth.
So there was a second chance for justice.
There was. And in the end, though delayed, justice was served. The convictions of Hale and Ramsey and the other conspirators, well, they brought a sense of closure to the Osage Nation.
It's a relief to hear that, but it's still so hard to process everything they had to endure just to get to that point.
Absolutely. The scars of the Reign of Terror, they ran deep. They had lost family members, friends, their sense of security, their trust in the very systems that were supposed to be protecting them.
It sounds like even with the convictions, there was still this sense of loss and injustice.
There was. The aftermath of the trials, it was bittersweet. While Hale and his accomplices were finally behind bars, Ernest Burkhart, who played such a key role in exposing the conspiracy, he received a surprisingly lenient sentence, and he was eventually paroled.
Paroled? After everything that he was involved in? That doesn't seem right.
Burkhart's parole sparked outrage among the Osage. They saw it as a betrayal, a painful reminder that even after all they had suffered, the justice system still failed to fully acknowledge the magnitude of their suffering.
It's just tragic. It highlights the power imbalances, how the system seemed to protect certain individuals while failing others.
Exactly. However, amidst all the darkness and injustice, there were glimmers of hope. Molly Burkhart, who had lost her sister, Anna, and endured so much heartache, she remained a pillar of strength for her community. She never wavered in her pursuit of justice for her family and for her people.
Molly's story is truly remarkable. After everything she went through, she still fought for her people.
Her story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the immense pain and loss, she refused to be silenced. Her determination to preserve her culture, to fight for her people's rights, it's deeply inspiring.
It sounds like Molly's strength really helped the Osage community heal and rebuild after this terrible chapter.
She certainly played a crucial role. And while the boomtown prosperity of Osage County faded, the scars of this dark period in American history, they remain. It's a story that needs to be remembered, not only for the horrors that it exposes, but also for the courage and resilience of the Osage people, who fought for their survival and for their right to a future free from fear.
It's a reminder that even in the face of such darkness, the fight for justice and the strength of the human spirit, well, they can prevail. But this case, it wasn't completely closed, was it? What about W. W. Vaughn, the attorney who died under those mysterious circumstances after uncovering information about the murders?
You're right. Even after the trials, there were some threads of this conspiracy that remained, well, unraveled. And Vaughn's death is one of the most intriguing loose ends. Officially, his death was ruled an accident. But as Grann interviewed family members and dug into the archival records, a different picture started to emerge.
So there might be more to this story. Even after all of the convictions, this is like something out of a crime novel.
Yeah.
What did Grann find? So we ended on a cliffhanger last time with that attorney, W. W. Vaughn, who died under those mysterious circumstances. And he started to find some inconsistencies with the official story. So what exactly did he uncover?
Well, Grann, he talked to Vaughn's granddaughter, Martha, who shared the story about her grandmother, Rosa. Rosa always suspected there was something more to her husband's death, foul play. She even filed a lawsuit against this guy named H.G. Burt, who was a prominent bank president.
A lawsuit? What was that about? Was it, connected to the Osage murders at all?
The lawsuit itself, no, it wasn't directly related to the murders. Rosa, she claimed that Burt had misappropriated funds from Vaughn's estate after his death. But it was this detail, this seemingly, unrelated detail that really caught Grann's attention.
So now we're going from murders to, possible financial schemes. This is getting even more complex. What made Grann, connect Burt to the Osage case?
Well, Grann, he dug deeper into those archival records, and he found evidence that suggested a link between Burt and, surprisingly, William Hale. There was even this one informant who claimed that Burt had bragged about splitting the boodle with Hale after the death of another Osage man, a guy named Big Heart.
Hold on, splitting the boodle. What does that even mean?
It's an old slang term, basically means dividing stolen profits. In this context, I think the informant was probably talking about this fraudulent claim that Hale had made on Big Heart's estate.
Okay, so it sounds like there was this whole other, financial aspect to this conspiracy, with Hale potentially profiting from these deaths, beyond just head rights. And Burt, this bank president, was possibly involved too. But where does Vaughn fit into all of this?
Well, remember, Vaughn, he was an attorney, and he was investigating these financial schemes, specifically Hale's attempts to gain control of those Osage head rights through guardianship and other shady dealings. It's plausible that someone like Burt, with his connections to Hale, would have felt threatened by Vaughn's investigation.
Right, yeah. If Vaughn was getting close to exposing a bigger conspiracy, someone might have wanted to, silence him. But is there any, concrete evidence that links Burt to Vaughn's death? Or is this, all just speculation?
It's not just speculation. Grann, he found this chilling note in the FBI files. Another informant, this one, claimed that H.G. Burt was responsible for Vaughn's murder and even named an accomplice. It was a former mayor known for his violent tendencies, who this informant said helped Burt throw Vaughn from that train.
Wow, that's a direct accusation. Why wasn't this investigated further? Did the FBI just, ignore this information?
Well, while Grann presents this information, it's important to note that it was never officially corroborated, The official ruling remained an accident, and no charges were ever brought against Burt or anyone else in connection with Vaughn's death.
So there are still unanswered questions. Even after the trials and everything, it seems like some parts of this conspiracy, they remained hidden.
Yeah, that's right. It offers this glimpse into the deeply rooted corruption in Osage County, and it suggests that the conspiracy might have extended far beyond Hale and his immediate circle, possibly reaching into the highest levels of society.
This whole story is it's a chilling reminder that the pursuit of wealth and power can corrupt, it can corrupt even those in positions of authority. And it also makes you realize that justice, even when it's served, doesn't always mean a complete resolution.
You're absolutely right. The Osage Reign of Terror, it wasn't just about a few greedy individuals. It was about a system that allowed them to exploit and terrorize an entire community with impunity.
It's horrifying. Yeah. And heartbreaking. But the Osage people, they endured so much, and yet They never gave up fighting for justice.
Their resilience, their determination, it's truly inspiring. They fought for recognition, for accountability, and ultimately for their survival.
So where does this leave us? I mean, we've uncovered this complex and tragic chapter of American history, this story of unimaginable wealth, horrific violence, and a conspiracy that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined.
The Osage Reign of Terror, it may be a story from the past, but it holds these really important lessons for us today. It reminds us to be vigilant, to hold those in power accountable, and to never forget the injustices that have been inflicted upon marginalized communities.
It's a story that needs to be remembered, discussed, and learned from. The Osage Nation, they endured unimaginable suffering. Yet their story is ultimately one of resilience, strength, and this unwavering pursuit of justice. And while there are still unanswered questions, their fight continues to inspire us to strive for a more just and equitable world.
Exactly. The echoes of this story, they can still be felt today. The struggle for justice and equality is ongoing, not only for the Osage Nation, but for Indigenous communities all over the world.
This deep dive has been a truly eye-opening experience. We encourage you to learn more about the Osage Nation, their history, their culture, and their ongoing fight for recognition and self-determination.
And remember, history isn't just something we read about in books. It's a living tapestry woven from the stories of those who came before us. By engaging with these stories, by listening to the voices of the past, we can shape a better future for everyone. And if you enjoyed this deep dive,
Be sure to subscribe to our channel.
we'll be exploring more amazing books and series.
And don't forget to share this episode.
And leave a comment.